The Sarasota County Bar Association is a proud partner in bringing you law in Sarasota. With voluntary membership of over 1,000 lawyers and judges, the Sarasota County Bar Association serves its members and your community by advancing legal professionalism, promoting practice development, and fostering fellowship. Visit www.sarasotabar.com for more information and to use the online directory to find an attorney.
This program is brought to you by a grant from the Community Foundation of Sarasota County and the Sarasota County Bar Association. The Education Channel produces the program and broadcasts from its state-of-the-art campus on Beneva Road. They make this program possible.
Greetings, I'm Erika Quartermaine and I am a Sarasota County judge. It's my pleasure to be here as the host of Law in Sarasota today. Since 2005, the Sarasota Bar Association has been sponsoring this program, which has provided high-quality legal education and captured the legal history of Sarasota. It is my aim to do that today, and today is January 26, 2023. On September 30th, 2022, less than 4 months ago, the eye of Hurricane Ian entered Charlotte Harbor and made landfall at Kayakasta Island, just south of the Charlotte-Sarasota County line. The eye wall was as large as all of Hurricane Charlie, which hit that same area 18 years prior. Although originally projected to go as north as Tampa, in the final days, Hurricane Ian took an unexpected southern turn and took almost the identical route as Charlie. For those of us who remember Charlie, we remember that unexpected route and the devastation that occurred. Ian's effects were felt all over Florida and beyond. Before coming to Florida, it hit Cuba, where it killed 5 people. All told, 148 people in Florida died as a result of Ian. When it left Florida, it went out to the Atlantic and went back to South Carolina, where it took 5 more lives. This was an absolutely devastating storm. It was the 3rd most costly weather disaster in the world, on record, according to a publication from Yale University. Here in Sarasota, we were spared the worst of the storm, but we were not unharmed. In the days after the storm, flooding caused by rain and compounded by failed levees caused major upheavals. People were evacuated from their homes by airboats. Interstate 75 was closed. The lights were off, with electricity not being restored for more than a week. It has been very trying for Sarasota and our neighbors. We have 2 great guests here today to discuss the impact of Hurricane Ian. Our first is Chris Johnson, and Chris Johnson came here 11 years ago to work in the arena of homelessness services. He is now currently the Chief Executive Officer of a most significant and important organization, the Suncoast Partnership to End Homelessness. That is the lead agency for the continuum of care in Sarasota and Manatee County. He holds a Master's of Divinity as well as degrees in Youth and Family Ministry and Humanities. Chris helps to give efforts in Sarasota and Manatee counties to move individuals from homelessness and into housing through following best practices and using creative problem-solving methods. I will also introduce Ms. Robin Stover, and she is here from Gulf Coast Legal Services. She's been a lawyer for 25 years or more, but interestingly, before becoming a lawyer, she taught junior high school and high school journalism in Compton, California, and Crenshaw. So she came here, like many people do, to care for her family, her aging parents, and has ended up staying where she's made a home and dedicated her career now to serving the underserved. So thank you both for being here and for all of the things that you do. I'm going to start off with Chris, and I understand that you are a long-term plan committee member for the recovery of the storm. So why don't you tell me a little bit about that committee?
Yeah, certainly. The long-term recovery group is a model that's used when there are disasters like this that strike an area. So it gathers leadership together to identify the needs, the gaps, the funding that might be needed, the leadership in the community that's needed, who needs to be at that table. They also form subcommittees that organize each of those individual areas, whether that's case management, whether that's financing or philanthropy. And so that group will be in place for the next 3 to 5 years following the recovery efforts in Sarasota County.
Wow. So why don't you tell me a little bit about the magnitude of damage in Sarasota?
So I'm glad you asked that. So I wanted to give some numbers from our FEMA VALs on the most recent numbers that they've come up with. So when Ian first hit, FEMA now has a total of 57,782 households who have registered for FEMA assistance. So when it hit, it took some time for people to find out how to register. How do they access services? How do they access assistance? So now we're getting the real look at what's going on. So out of those 57,782 households that registered, 25,000 of them were found eligible for FEMA assistance. Now, when you look at those that registered, there were 47,564 households that registered damage on their homes. Some completely destroyed, some major damage, all the way down to minor damage, of course. But that's 47,000 families. Even if you took half of those that are unable to actually live in their residence now, right? That is an astronomical number of individuals that are displaced from the storm. So FEMA, in coming in, offers, great assistance with their housing assistance, right? They've already allocated $65.2 million paid out of housing assistance. So they're on the scene, but it's still not enough to meet the need. And that's where the long-term recovery group comes in. It says, what do we do for these families now? What do we do for the kids that are displaced right now?
So what are you doing?
So that's where we're in the formulation stages. That's a great question. And this is what's so, it's such a struggle with any type of disaster recovery. Everyone wants to have something now. And it takes a long time to get the pieces in play so that it's seamless, so that it's thought out. It's the idea of our philanthropic agencies are amazing in Sarasota County.
Yes.
And they came right off the bat to help, right? They put money out there available to everybody who needed it. But now we need to take a step back and go, okay, we have these wonderful philanthropic organizations, but are there other funds that could come in to help? Are there other opportunities for housing we need to identify, right? There are people that are in Airbnbs right now, in hotel rooms right now, but some of those funds are running out. So where do we go from here? Because we already knew there was a lack of affordable housing and a lack of available housing in Sarasota County. So that's the next struggle that this group's going to look at.
So are you seeing people leave this community since there is a lack of affordable and available housing?
We are, even outside of the initial shelter that was set up, right? They set up a shelter, the Red Cross was running it. There were households right from there who said, we're just going to leave. We don't want to go through this again. So we're going to go ahead and move out. So some went to Tampa, some went out of state to be with family. So we did see a wave of that. And I think that we're going to probably see even a bigger wave of that going forward because of the lack of resources within the community.
Yes, I can imagine. Well, I'm going to turn to Robin. And I know that Gulf Coast Legal has done a lot to assist the individuals who have legal problems that arise from this hurricane. And I'd like to first hear about what it is that Gulf Coast Legal does.
Sure, thanks. Thank you, Judge Quartermaine. So Gulf Coast Legal Services has actually been in our Southwest Florida community for almost 45 years. It'll be 45 years in, just a few years, and that is awesome. Yes. Another thing I wanted to say real quickly is that we are so excited and so happy to now be housed in South Sarasota County in the United Way of South Sarasota County building. So for those of you who know Venice, that is in the Walmart shopping center, and it is on the end of the complex by Books A Million. So our residents can find Gulf Coast Legal Services there every day of the week, which is just fantastic for South County.
Yes, and that's right next to our new courthouse.
It is right next to the lovely, beautiful, awesome new courthouse. And so that is just super. And those wonderful, fantastic clerks of court definitely do send vulnerable residents with questions right down to us, and we are there to meet them and serve their needs. So in brief, Gulf Coast Legal Services has 4 units, a housing unit, and we concentrate on eviction, defense, and mitigation now. Back during the Great Recession, we concentrated on foreclosure defense and loan modifications. Housing also incorporates other housing problems like mobile home park disputes, that type of thing. We have a family law department that where our lawyers assist children and adults if they are victims of domestic abuse or sexual violence or human trafficking. We have a financial stability unit, which is very active on that's consumer law. And those attorneys are awesome, and they handle everything from unfair and deceptive trade practices to sitting down with a senior citizen and interpreting a contract, hopefully before that senior signs it, so they can have a clear understanding of what they're going to be signing. That unit includes a low-income taxpayer clinic, so we help our taxpayers with reducing their IRS debt, and it also has a really robust birth certificate program. I always say birth controlled, but it's not. It's a birth certificate program. And that's pretty amazing because we've gotten birth certificates for people who were raised their entire lives with a different name. They went to school.
Oh, wow. So that is a trick.
Yeah, it is. So, and then we also do just a wide variety of, we also have life planning services when we have funding for that, so helping our seniors with advanced directives, that type of thing.
Wow, okay, so you guys have a lot on your plate. So when this hurricane hit, I imagine you saw a lot of people walking through your door because of issues due to the hurricane. So why don't you tell me a little bit about how you worked with FEMA, because I understand that you all worked with FEMA.
Well, first I have to give a big shout out. Legal Aid of Minnesota was right there with the Disaster Recovery Center in Northport from the day they opened their doors. And likewise, so were we. And Legal Aid of Minnesota was also at the Disaster Recovery Center, which was there with the Red Cross. The Red Cross put that up to house those people who were completely left devastated and homeless due to the hurricane. So FEMA stands for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and that is a part of the Department of Homeland Security. And one thing that I thought FEMA was awesome. I thought they were awesome. So nice, so active, so good, so cooperative. And one thing that I learned was that FEMA workers are kind of like firefighters because they get trained, and they are hired and they're trained, and but they don't spring into action until there's a disaster.
Oh, wow, okay.
And so when there's a disaster, those FEMA representatives are actually called reservists. So the reservists are called up and they're deployed to an area like Florida, and they stay for weeks to months and help the community right there at the ground level. So one thing I think people should know is that unfortunately the time to apply for services from FEMA for Hurricane Ian, that window closed on January 12th. So
that was about 2.5 months after.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Does that window close
3.5
January
months.
12th? We are still able to assist our clients with appeals. And the appeal process, you can appeal a FEMA denial, or if FEMA has awarded you perhaps less than you really think you need within 60 days.
So what kind of things were people seeking to obtain from FEMA?
Well, okay, so FEMA helps to make a person, they do not put them back into the same place they were before the storm. Okay, the idea is not to put them back in the same place where they were. The idea is to give that individual access to money, to funds, so that they can use those funds to help to recover and go back to a different normal. They may not be able to go back to normal, but they can go back to a new normal. And FEMA provides money for the structure of the home. Okay, it doesn't provide money for to fix the garden and the pool and that type of thing, but it will compensate a person to an extent for damage to their home. It will also assist homeowners and tenants who have no place to go, who are homeless. Okay, and that's through the form of Airbnb vouchers, other types of vouchers, other types of assistance where they will go out and they'll place people in temporary shelter. What amazed me was that our FEMA workers would drive to Northport during the day to work at the Disaster Recovery Center, and then they would have to drive north of Tampa to be able to find a hotel. So every day they'd be going back and forth because there was nothing available in our area.
Right, and I think a lot of people observed that migration daily on 75 because the traffic was so bad going north at the end of the day, and probably still is, although traffic is pretty bad generally these days.
These days, yeah.
But I want to ask both of you, and I'll start with Chris. I think one of the more devastating aspects of this storm was where the worst damage occurred, which was where there was affordable housing and there was a higher density maybe of people. Can you comment on that?
So yeah, I would agree with you absolutely, Judge Quartermaine. The fact is that Sarasota County started off before Ian with a $34,000 unit deficit in housing, in affordable housing. And you're absolutely right that our most affordable housing options that we had were in South County. And so with looking at those numbers of homes, 47,000 plus that were damaged or destroyed, that's a huge loss to our inventory of affordable housing. And we know with the influx coming into our state constantly, our prices have continued to rise. They started to level a little bit.
Right.
But if you look at the continued trends, we'll see where that levels off. That's my biggest concern about it, is that with the damage and with the houses that were destroyed, how quickly can we rebuild? It takes time to construct, right? So when we look at even apartment complexes that we've, had in some of our service providers that have done, they'll take 2 years to get on the ground. So again, going back to, okay, what can we do now, and what is our plan for that, so that we can rebuild stronger and better down the road as well.
Right, and hopefully help those people who really need it the most. I mean, and it's probably one of the, Sarasota is a very wealthy community, and there are some gorgeous parts of South County, but there's also some, less affluent areas down there. So, and I'm sure that that's one of the reasons that your office is down there.
Well, it definitely is, and I remember distinctly when Governor DeSantis toured Northport. That Hurricane Ian was just a crazy amount of continuous rain. I mean, it was just raining forever. And he commented and said that this was the worst standing water situation that he'd seen in the entire state of Florida. And I go back and I look at those photographs, the aerial photographs and the photographs, as you said, of people being lifted out and away from their homes, just to remember that, yes, you know, some parts of Sarasota was damaged less severely. But if you look at those homes and you look at that flooding, and we can see, like Chris said, those are the people who work at all of our businesses.
Right.
And certainly, we know this. Northport, you know, people drive in from Northport to serve and work at all of our businesses here. And so much of that housing was destroyed because of, like, as you said, the flooding. The rain did not stop. And Northport paid a heavy price for that.
Right. So I know that we saw some interesting issues arise in landlord-tenant cases down there. You know, for example, a notice would need to be posted on the door, but there was no door to post it on. Or tenants would say, yes, I did not pay my rent, but there is no place for me to live because the house is gone. So why don't you discuss a little bit about the unit that deals with housing with legal aid and how they dealt with landlord-tenant issues?
Sure, absolutely. So, you know, we learned in law school that the property owner has a bundle of sticks, and they have all the sticks, and each one of those sticks is a property right. They can own it, they can sell it, they can build on it, they can do whatever they want. But when they give a couple of those sticks to a tenant, well, they don't have many sticks, but they do have some. And one important right in this specific situation is that in Florida, the tenant has the unilateral and absolute right to terminate a lease and move out if that unit has been substantially destroyed, damaged through what they call, it's a casualty provision, casualty damage, a disaster. And so additional, and with that, let's say that the back 2 bedrooms were completely destroyed. The trees in the roof, and they're soaked and they can't do a thing with them. But let's say the kitchen is still dry. Well, that family is going to stay in the kitchen because there's no place else to move. So if they end up doing that, they can reduce the rent in comparably to the diminution in value of the part of the residence that's been destroyed. So if your rent was $1,000 and now you can only live in the living room, then perhaps your rent will now be $600. And that is one of the sticks that the tenant has. Okay, the landlord cannot force a tenant out of a property, out of a unit. They think they can.
Yeah.
They think they can, but that is not how our Florida law works. And that's because, think about it, there were so many disasters over the decades in Florida, perfect opportunity to say, oh, sorry, tenant, you're going to have to leave now because I want to rebuild and fix it up.
Right. And speaking of rebuilding, I think that brings in another interesting issue, which is the 50% rule. So tell us what that is.
Okay, well, the 50% rule actually is a regulation of the National Flood Insurance Program, and that the National Flood Insurance Program is a part of FEMA. FEMA runs it. But what happens is a county joins the federal flood insurance program in an attempt to keep our insurance rates reasonable. Okay, so it's a county set up type of thing. And the 50% rule, in essence, is that if your home is substantially damaged in the hurricane or through a natural disaster, your home is substantially damaged or destroyed, and you want to fix it. And let's say the structure value of your home is a certain amount of money. You are prohibited from fixing your house, rebuilding your house, if you are at 50% or greater of the value of your house. 50% or greater, the cost of rebuilding,
Right.
all your line items added together turns out to be more than 50% of your structure's value. Why is that? Well, theoretically, it's so people don't continue to rebuild homes that are just going to get damaged again. Let's rebuild it,
Right.
gets damaged. Let's
bring it up to
rebuild it,
code
we get
and-
damaged. Yeah, so you're prohibited from rebuilding your home unless you then bring it up to current flood ordinance regulations. In other words, you must treat your home as if it's a new build, and you have got to comply with all current flood regulations and all current codes. So that is going to price out of some homeowners.
Right.
That's another reason why people are throwing up their hands because they can't do that and leaving.
Because this is the working class primarily in South County, and it is very expensive to build, and property values have gone up, and there are limited people to build these things, so they've got to go somewhere. And I think we have just a little bit of time left, so before we turn to some final thoughts, I want to maybe take just a few, maybe 30 seconds or so for you to tell us about the changes in the property insurance, because we are going through a crisis right now, partly because of these storms, primarily because of these storms. So tell us about that.
Okay, so very quickly, in December of 2022, the legislature called a special session, and there were some changes to our property insurance laws that became effective January 1st of 2023. I think one of the most important is that now homeowners must pay their own attorney fees. Okay, so previously, if you're a homeowner and you sue your insurance company and you received $1 more than you were initially awarded in that claim, you are entitled then to be compensated for your attorney fees for that case. So now a homeowner is responsible to pay their own attorney fees. What this does is it takes our working class homeowners and our middle class homeowners out of the litigation equation. Okay, they are not going to be able to afford
to come up with that. So that's when you're going to have to step in even more.
Yes.
So let me just ask you both for final thoughts. What are we going to do better? Because it's probably going to happen again. The storms seem to be increasing in their frequency and magnitude. So just take a few seconds to tell us, what are we going to do better? How do we prepare better?
So one thing is our long-term recovery group is going to be in place even once this disaster is over. That structure will remain. So it will be there if and when we have another disaster that comes. I also think with some of the resources that are coming in, we're going to be able to build back those units that are there that we lost stronger, so that they're less susceptible to extreme damage in the future.
Build back better. Okay.
Build back better. Yes.
And how about you? Just a final thought.
Well, my final thought is that disasters such as Hurricane Ian bring out the very best in people, and they bring out the very worst. And typically they bring out the worst because people are so miserable and so devastated by their loss. But I've also seen this hurricane bring out the very best, and especially because we have been able to collaborate with our partners, such as the United Way of South Sarasota County, the United Way Suncoast, Women's Resource Center. All these entities did have now some funds available. So we are able to make a real difference working with our collaborating agencies and actually providing what each specific family might need, which 9 times out of 10 comes down to some money to get back on their feet. So that's my final thought.
Well, those are wonderful final thoughts. So Thank you all for tuning in, and I will be signing off. Until next time.
For more than 40 years, the Community Foundation of Sarasota County has partnered with estate planning attorneys and their clients to unlock possibilities for everyone who calls our region home. Our motto, Be the One, reflects our deeply held belief that anyone can be a philanthropist and give back to our community regardless of means. Visit www.cfsarasota.org or call 941-955-3000 for more information.